Hello and welcome. It's Tuesday and welcome to our virtual happy hour. We missed you on Thursday, but hopefully you got a great shot of our 10th anniversary celebration, which will start off today. I'm your host, Greg Volo. Thank you for attending our virtual happy hour today. I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening with our 10th anniversary. If you missed it last Thursday, it's an amazing part that we're having a collaboration effect with Dogfish Head for a beer called I Remember My First Check-In. It's going to be a great cause and a great opportunity for us to be able to have a beer for the entire community. So check it out at untapped.com/10. It's a great opportunity to see all the breweries that have pledged to have this beer and make it. It's going to also have a great aspect of being able to come together for local communities, as we're going to be able to have all the breweries source an ingredient from this beer within 100 miles of their location. So once again, check out the celebration, all the great things, including our virtual party that we're going to have for the event at untapped.com/10. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go right into our virtual happy hour. I'm going to bring on my two guests today. That's right. I got two guests today. So it's a pretty amazing thing. Let's bring on Brady and Ryan from the the Brew Chat Podcast. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Absolutely. Pleasure to be on here.
Awesome. We were just talking before about pre-show about all the great beers from your area, and you guys are happy enough to actually send out some of the beers that we're going to be having on this particular show today. So we'll start right with there. I mean, that's what we're all about in this virtual happy hour. So we're drinking today. As we'll put it on the screen. This are the two beers we're talking about: the Mirror Universe and also the Castle Cream Ale. We're going to start with the Castle Cream Ale here. We all have this beer. Brady, why don't you give me a little background on this beer before we get started and cracking it open?
Well, so before the show, Ryan and I were talking about, well, if we were going to send you a beer, what should we send you? And so Ryan's not a huge hophead. Sorry to throw you under the bus, Ryan. So it only seemed fitting to send you something that was kind of widely known in Minnesota, but you can't really get it elsewhere. So the Castle Cream Ale is kind of that perfect beer. I don't know. It seems like everyone enjoys it. So,
there you go. What's your take on this beer, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, we're land of 10,000 lakes. Castle Danger Breweries on Lake Superior, biggest lake, and it's got a special place in my heart. One of the first beers I really had and fell in love with. So only fitting to kind of share my love with your audience.
There you go. All right. Well, let's crack it open here. And if you're out there too, make sure you crack open your beer right now. And obviously you can check your beer on Untapped. Make sure you tag Untapped at Home. It's a great venue that you can see everyone else around the world drinking safely at their own home. We just passed around 25 million check-ins on that particular venue. So it's a pretty amazing thing. You can see everyone checking in and what they're drinking. So, wow, this is a crystal clear beer, as I can say here, right through the in there as well. That's awesome. That's super clear.
Ryan's even got the proper glassware there.
Everyone did a great job with the pour, by the way. Usually I'm the one that does the worst job here. I think we all did a pretty good job with this. So cheers to you guys. Thank you so much for joining in, and enjoy your beverage.
Cheers.
I can say the cream ale, I think a lot of people kind of assume a thicker beer. You can't see through it, more of a creamy texture. But this is one of those styles, in my opinion, guys, I feel like it needs to come back. I mean, obviously it's still there from a brim, but this is going to be great on like a summer day, really crisp, clean. Just like lagers and pilsners I'm really into right now. So definitely enjoy this beer. This is a great one. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those. It's like, it seems like, I guess in Minnesota, the cream ales are kind of the go-tos. It seems like, almost maybe not the people that are super into craft beer, but the people that can appreciate craft beer a little bit, maybe on the edge, right?
It's definitely a gateway beer.
Exactly,
100%,
especially around here.
Very cool. Well, if you're joining us late, we're talking to Brady Lindquist and Ryan Salsman, who are the founders of the host of Brew Chat Podcast. We're going to get into all that information about what that is, how you can listen to them, and what their podcast is about. But if you have any questions specific to this topic, you can let us know by asking on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, right in that link itself. Ask those questions, and we'll try to put some of them on the screen to get started. But just to kick things off here, why don't you guys give a brief background of yourselves, where you're located? You kind of gave that away from a Minnesota perspective. So, Brady, why don't we start with you, a little bit about your background and what you do and your content creator of the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota, kind of west central Minnesota. I'm a couple hours from the Twin Cities, and I guess I got into photography kind of early on. and I was trying to figure out. So I was really into Gary Vee, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably are, and most people have heard of him nowadays because he's everywhere on the internet. And and so I guess I kept listening to his content. It's for the last 5-6 years, something like that. And it's content's key and all these different things. And so I'm in real estate, and I do real estate photography, and that's kind of my day job. And I was posting things about houses and stuff like that for the business. And so I wanted something else to use my photography on. So I was like, I love craft beer. I was getting really into craft beer. And so I was like, why don't I start taking photos of beer?
There you go, right?
It kind of turns out that a lot of people do that. And so I started posting my photos on Instagram and on Untapped and different places. And it's the whole idea, the hope was, being in West Central Minnesota, kind of in the middle of nowhere, it was to kind of build community around that, find new people. And that's kind of craft beer at its core, is that collaboration and community, right? So so that's kind of where it started for me, is just putting content on the internet. So kind of Gary's philosophy.
It works.
yeah. So,
well, I'm excited to talk to you. I'm kind of a photo geek in that perspective too. So I'd love to hear some of your insights in there, and we'll get to that. But Ryan, wanted to give you a little background as well in terms of what where you're at in Minnesota, what you do, and how it all comes together there.
Sure. I'm a little closer to the cities. I'm a little bit out of Minneapolis, in a suburb called Bloomington. If you know the Mall of America, that's where I live, just down the road. I got into craft beer only in the last 5-6 years or so, because we were going to Oktoberfest, the real one, for my honeymoon, and I figured I better start drinking beer. But then when we got back, I kind of fell in love with tap rooms and the community and craft beer and the creativity. And I'd been looking for something as a creative outlet for a while. I was toying with, I had a t-shirt blog, and
T-shirt blog.
Yeah. And then I was going to do a craft soda blog.
Okay.
And then I realized, I'm really into this tap room thing. And so I focused more on that. I blog about the tap room experience and my visits to different breweries. And I don't focus as much on the beer, more on the ambiance and that kind of thing. And so I've been on Instagram and doing the blog for like 4 years now.
Very cool. Very cool. We're excited to have you guys on here talking all things about, the intersection between experience at bars and restaurants and tap rooms to the photography side. So I guess we'll just start off with there. I mean, with you, Brady, obviously talking about beer photography, and we'll put some of your pictures up on screen here of what's happening. Put you on the spot of what's happening here for your Instagram page. Ultimately, one of the things I really love about your content is it always focuses on the beer as the center point of the discussion. There's other ones here about this one I really enjoy from Top of Life, which is a great brewery out there as well.
Yeah,
what's your kind of mindset when you go into taking a picture of a beer? Is there the lighting? What are some tips that you can probably provide the audience out there to kind of get the best out of your photos?
Yeah, I guess it all depends on where I'm at. So lately I've kind of, I think Ryan and I have talked about this a lot, and I've tried to focus a little bit more on being at the tap room and getting some different photos, different types of styles of photos, whether it be a mural on the wall or a sign or even the beer itself. But so going, if you're talking about an actual beer can or something like that, it all depends on kind of the time of year. So we're in Minnesota. It's always we have a small window of summer, and then we're into winter, which kind of presents quite a bit of challenges,
right?
Especially when you talk about light, because natural light is great, and if you can get away with natural light, that ideally, right? But winter comes and it's dark by like 5 o'clock. So then you have to get creative on how you're going to do things. And so interior wise, I think it just really depends on the beer. You got to get creative with it. And so it just really depends that way. But I guess my philosophy there is like, I'm trying to have it be stylistic or something different to where you it doesn't look. I mean, there's so many people that are making content on the internet, and so it's kind of hard to stand out. And I try to put my own spin on it a little bit, even though I mean I know that's kind of hard to do these days. But, yeah,
it's all about the crispy bokeh. That's all everyone cares about these days when it comes to the internet.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yes. So, yeah, I don't know. And as far as like tips and stuff like that, I think it really just depends on how you're shooting. Are you using your phone, or are you using a DSLR or mirrorless camera? One of those two, because they are very, very different, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think, for most people, probably general audience, they're probably using their phone, and phones are super good these days. It's pretty insane. And I guess the main tips probably would be, so one is the angle, right? A lot of people tend to kind of get their phone up and they're kind of angled downward. Whereas if you bring your camera downward and be kind of head on with the shot, typically that'll look a little better. And then I know there's the conversation between whether you use portrait mode or not. I know Ryan's a portrait mode guy.
I'm not a portrait mode guy, so I'm on your team.
And here's kind of the you've got that idea of, yes, if you use portrait mode, if you're using glassware or something like that, a lot of times you'll get that kind of fuzzy, weird, like missing information, right? And there is apps out there that will help bring that information back. So if you are going to do that and you want the nice bokeh, which is the blurred out background, which makes your beer kind of pop out, right? I know I'm trying to remember the name. It's called Focos, I think is what it is. I don't know if it's on Android, but I know it's definitely on iOS. And you can actually, so if you take the picture, there's so much information in the metadata on your phone. And there's all that information that actually can be taken back. So you can refocus and you can add in. So if the glassware is missing, you can literally go in there and paintbrush it back in. And then you kind of solve that issue. So
why didn't you give me that tip earlier?
Well, your photos are so great. I haven't seen that issue, right?
Oh, it's been
it depends. My experience, the portrait mode, typically on a glassware, at the very top of that glass is all kind of fuzzy, and that's what I've seen the most. I remember, I take most of my shots now with the mirrorless camera, but at the same time, I remember the old days of the portrait mode, and even the current days, that little top was always bugging me. But I'm more perfectionist than anything else, so it's typically most of the time working really well for most people, and it's a really good tip that you mentioned about the angle. So I always like to joke that, when you're talking about taking pictures for real estate, that the pictures never do it like the house justice. If you're ever in the housing market and you ever look at a picture on Zillow or wherever, it's always like, wow, this looks really great. And you get there like, wow, this looks totally different than the picture. They did a great job of staging this. So I can definitely have those tips make perfect sense there with lighting and spacing and whatnot.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing, this is kind of a random, I haven't seen anyone really talk about this, but a lot of the times it depends on the situation, right? And where the beer is sitting and stuff like that. But a lot of the times, if you flip your phone upside down and you take the photo so you can get the perspective, that obviously your phone is so tall, whatever, right? You might not be able to get it perfectly level. If you flip your phone upside down, you can get that shot the way you want, the perspective that you want. And then in post, which you just go to your camera roll, you can hit edit and then rotate it back around again. And then you're set. So it was another little random tip.
That's a good tip. I've never heard that one before at all. That's a great idea. You get that angle from that perspective instead of trying to sneak down at the bar or try to do something like that. You look less awkward from that perspective there. But those are great tips, Brady. Thanks for that information there.
Yeah. No
and we have also.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's why Brady holds his DSLR upside down too.
It's a mirrorless.
I've never.
Come on, you're right.
Oh, it's a mirrorless. Never mind.
I'm gonna have to try that. That's a pretty good tip there. But speaking of questions from the audience here, this one's from Teal, and Teal says, "Beer Fellows give us a great opportunity to share some of the amazing label artwork out there in the world. What have been some of your favorite label art beers and most creative breweries that you've mentioned?" We'll start with since Brady, you just talked here. I'll give Ryan a chance to tune in. Obviously, being talking a lot of pictures of the tap rooms and whatnot. Maybe use the same perspective from a tap room perspective in terms of art and discovery there.
Yeah, I mean, top of my list, Indeed is another local brewery, and they have a really unique illustrative style that they put on their cans, and they have murals on their tap room. You can find the same artist does murals all over the Twin Cities, and I really am in love with those. If the listeners haven't seen any Indeed cans, definitely go check those out. I also really like, there's Junkyard has kind of really, really illustrative, funny labels, and same with Oliphant, which is a Wisconsin brewery. And those are what I really like, because those come out in murals at the tap room for both of those breweries. And the colors really pop. But you scroll through your Instagram feed, there's so many nice cans everywhere. Yes. I see new ones all the time. I love that display of art, Yeah,
here's an example of the Indeed cans here. It's pretty epic. I love that artwork there from that side. So have not heard of these guys, and this is pretty epic. I mean, the time that it takes to put all the design just from a can perspective is pretty awesome from that side. So very cool there. What about you, Brady, on your side? What were some interesting cans that you've seen or artwork in your photography days?
Well, I mean, I think I echo what Ryan said for sure. Well, we were just recently, and not to plug the podcast here, but we were just recently at Lupulin, and we got to talk to their designer marketing guy. And basically, I mean, his stuff is incredible. And I would go, like, Lupulin is one of those that just, if you pull up some of their stuff, Marcus Paulson is his name. And he'll be on the podcast probably. I think it's going to air like next week, something like that. But Junkyard, absolutely. I mean, Drecker, I know they're in North Dakota, but they just kind of feel like a Minnesota brewery just because they're right there, right? And yeah, there's so many incredible artists, can design. That's what's so fun about craft beer too, is just you get to see all these creative people putting all this work into this thing. And it makes such a difference in the branding and the identity of these breweries. It's fun.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how much attention these brewers give to that. I think, when you talk about beer overall, I think over the last couple of years, and you probably have seen this obviously all over the country, is that, people flock to these beers when they're buying it and they're not sure what to buy based on looks alone. Obviously Untapped and other rating sites come into flavor there. But, when I'm at my local, grocery store or have you, I'm not looking for a beer specifically. I'm just checking what's available. I'm drawn to these cans and artwork, and it's become so important from a brand perspective to kind of talk about these things. So it's really interesting on that part. Just see the attention to detail, and I think it's really appreciated in the industry when it comes to these things from that side.
No, absolutely.
And you definitely see that with wine too, and I think it's more apparent with beer. That's what I did when I first was into it. I was grabbing the cool can, and I still do that.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned it before, Brady, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it, but give us a little bit about what, Brew Chat is. Obviously, it's a podcast, how you guys got started on there. Give us kind of a rundown of what you guys talk about on there and the theme of the show.
Yeah, so really it was like almost a year ago. I want to say it was like kind of late 2019 that I decided, so I'd done the photography thing. I love photography, but I also love podcasts. And I saw that in kind of based off of kind of the people that we had talked to and it kind of in the Minnesota craft beer scene, there wasn't anyone that was doing a podcast kind of like Brew Chat. And so the idea was really to talk to creative people in beer, whether it is I hate the term influencer, but
It's still real. It's a real thing.
Yeah, the content creators.
There you go. Better name for it.
Maybe the better term. I don't know. But then, like we just talked about, labels, like people that are in marketing, people that are murals, things like that. We really want to talk to people that are craft beer creative. So we always say that word, craft beer creative. And so it's really about that. And it has been probably geared more towards Minnesota people, but we've had a few people from outside of Minnesota. And yeah, it's just talking about people in craft beer and being creative. And yeah, it's all about community, and it's a fun thing. And that's what craft beer, what's so great about it is there's such a community and there's so many creative people in it. Yep. And so it's just trying to highlight those people.
Yeah, obviously, Ryan, we'll put the website on the screen here for everyone to see. But Ryan, one of your takes obviously is on enjoying the experience. I think that's one of the things that makes drinking beer in a tap room probably not so much anymore because of COVID-19 and things like that. But for me, being able to go into a bar, or restaurant, or a brewery and see that kind of tap room experience, that has a whole nother meaning of a beer drinker's kind of path from that perspective. That's got to add some different layers to the conversation where it's not just heavily on the beer side, but also talking about the experience of visiting these tap rooms too.
Absolutely. And, I actually was originally a guest on the podcast, and now I'm become a co-host just recently. And yeah, we want to move forward and not focus so much on the beer. Not so much about that, really focus on the creativity and the craftsmanship and passion and things like that about, what drives these creatives, what keeps them passionate about what they do, what's their creative process. And that can include brewers, it can include can design, illustrators, et cetera. And that's kind of what we're focusing on. And with breweries, we're trying to focus on, what kind of experience are they trying to bring to the guests? What are they looking for? From if someone leaves their tap room or comes to their tap room, and what drives them when they're brewing beer and what they're really aiming to please.
Yeah, I just put it down from the screen, but our own co-host from our own podcast, we're on yours. So that's a really good episode to check out it if you like. John Harrison are the co-host of the Drinking Socially podcast as well. So
yeah, it was great to have them on.
Very, very cool. Obviously, we're repping the shirt here, so we are definitely supporters of your craft there. I think that's one of the interesting part about all this. There are tons and tons of podcasts around beer on there. One of the interesting parts of what draws me the most to beer is the creative side. Ultimately, trying to find people in this industry that are incredibly creative and talking about their process and their experiences. So it's a really important thing to highlight that beer is not just about pouring the grain in, pouring the sugars and doing it. That's a major part of it, but also talking about your craft. And I think that's one thing I've always tried to illustrate as well in our community is that, people have a gravitate toward people that have this Etsy effect where they want to see the person behind the products that they're making, have that sense of ownership. Do you find the people you talk to have, this incredible passionate voice and that leads to more rare discussions about a beer and the future of the industry?
Absolutely. It's everyone's a little bit different in how they see craft beer and how they want to convey that experience and even the artwork. And there's so much complexity to that thing, but absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's interesting to see their take on even the beers that we're trying for brewers and things like that. And what they really got out of it is something completely different. And not necessarily communicated to the average taproom guest. And so that, to me and to Brady, is just fascinating about, what's really driving them. Why did they do this? And it goes for anyone that's creating something.
Absolutely. We talk about tap rooms, obviously, and I've actually never been to Minnesota in my life, which is a horrible thing. Hopefully, one day we'll rectify that. But
we have some good craft beer.
Yes, that is for true. I'm really excited about all the great stuff that's coming up there. But for listeners that may not have been to Minnesota or are attempting to go in the future, what are some up and coming breweries that are not on everyone's radar just yet, but some that you definitely have to visit if you're in the area? I put you guys on the spot here because that's what I do. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
How do you narrow that down? I'll start a little bit, but the ones that come to mind, and I don't know nationwide, a lot of these breweries probably aren't well known. I think Drecker maybe is, and that's North Dakota, but Like Black Stack is one of those big ones. Barrel Theory, Barrel Theory doesn't distribute, but they're a great brewery. Junkyard is another great brewery. Those are kind of the ones I really think of. And I have one that's really close to me. We're about an hour away, and they're kind of I know they hate when I say this, but kind of in the middle of nowhere. But Talking Waters is making some really fun beer, and so I'd go there.
Yeah, and I think there's a pocket of breweries in Minneapolis in a section called Northeast Minneapolis, and there's just a ton of great breweries in there. In downtown Minneapolis, there's Modest. That's a really popular one. Indeed, as I mentioned, Dangerous Man, which they don't distribute, but they have some of the best beer in the state.
They're great.
Yeah,
really great.
Fair
it's funny
State.
how the ones that don't distribute typically go to the top of the list from the outsider perspective, but
sure.
Definitely agree there.
Fair State too, which we have the Mirror Universe. I could just go on and on, right? So,
there's so many good ones. That's just it. It's hard to you think on the top of your head, and there's just so many.
Yeah. I think that's the cool thing about craft beers, because, you talk about brands and breweries, and, there's national brands and breweries that everyone goes. But when you talk to someone locally in an area here, you're going to get a different flavor. I didn't know a single one of those breweries you guys rattle off of. And you guys are like, wow, those are just the top of my tongue, So it's great to kind of hear that kind of conversation about how beer kind of grows in different regional areas across the country. And I think that's very unique to this industry, specifically when it comes to, local flavor and local brands and whatnot. So it's definitely good to see. Again, hopefully when this whole thing goes away, I'd love to take a trip up there and see what's going on from that perspective. Because it definitely is. It's definitely one of those areas I think that people, the Midwest, I guess you would call it, from that perspective. And then on top of that, you get a lot of breweries from, the areas of the country that people on the East Coast forget sometimes. North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, Montana, that people don't really kind of think about. You're in that kind of pocket out there, and it's always opportunity for local flavor to kind of
fit. Middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly, right? But that's definitely very, very cool. But one of the comments I just saw in the chat about beer tourism, it's a real thing. I mean, I think people look at this, obviously now with COVID, it's not as significant as it used to be. There are places like Asheville in North Carolina that people just continue to go just for the beer. Do you think that Minnesota has changed over the last couple of years, or even more since you guys have been there, in terms of the amount of breweries popping up and the tourism there? What's your kind of take from that perspective on that growth?
Absolutely. I think for Ryan, he's the tab traveler, and having COVID has been pretty tough on him.
Yeah, I can't really go to
I'll let him talk.
Yeah, when I started, there was a fair amount of craft breweries, and it all started, the whole boom here started with a brewery called Surly. They pushed for the laws to change to allow for craft breweries to serve beer on site. We have some of the worst beer laws in the United States. Minnesota does, or did. We still have some weird laws, but so that kind of unlocked this opportunity for craft brewers to start making beer and selling it on premise. And that really started a boom. And since then, we've kind of, it just catapults. Every week you'd check the local craft beer magazine, and there's 3 openings every week. Right. And now it's over 200 craft breweries in the state, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. When I think of Asheville, I love Asheville. I've only been there once, and I can't wait to go back, but it's not quite there yet. But Duluth, Minnesota, and Castle Danger is right outside of Duluth, and so I kind of treat it as the same. They're like a mini Asheville, the same population, but it's a really craftsmanship style city up in northern Minnesota, and they've got a ton of breweries, and they and some cideries and things like that. And so within the state, that's like a big destination. We're starting to see little pockets of, if you go here, you could go to 7 different breweries. It's 2 hours out of Minneapolis, but you could go to 7 different ones. And believe me, that's plenty for myself. So yeah, even where in my hometown, I'm from a very small town. And if you go down there, you can, not in town, but in the surrounding communities, every little town has a brewery. And you can go and bounce around to these tiny little breweries they don't distribute anywhere. And you can check them out. And I think people really love that.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, whenever I'm traveling, I always try to use, obviously, a plug for myself here for the Untapped app to find out actually where the breweries are located around you in the map tab. But, one of the things I really liked about, areas that focus on beer is like the ability to kind of walk down the street and see like 4 or 5 breweries from that perspective, making it almost like a beer town from that perspective there. So it's really great to see that kind of growth in areas that, traditionally people don't really assume. I think everyone who's not from Minnesota just assumes the entire state is full of ice all the time from the entire period. So it's great to have that kind of perspective there on growth in the industry and being more of a travel-oriented perspective there. But, speaking about states here, I want to ask both of you guys this question here about, talking about Minnesota. You've obviously talked about how the great areas there is. What are some states that you have not been to that you're looking to travel, obviously, when this COVID thing releases and you're excited about the beer opportunities there? Where are some areas that you guys want to travel to try some stuff?
Oh, man. Tap Traveler, you probably should start.
Well, getting all the nods here.
If you can't think of yours, Brady, I know yours too. I think like northeastern United States, Virginia, outstate New York, that's definitely on my list. Going back to Oregon, I was out in Portland before I drank beer. It's like I kick myself all the time now. But definitely on the top of the list. I'd love to go back to Asheville. I didn't even scratch the surface of Asheville. Those are the 3 that kind of pop in my head. I've been to, I tell people this. I've been to San Diego. I've been to some other big beer hot spots, Asheville. And I really think the Minnesota beer, I come back and I have the beer here, it stacks up totally from a quality perspective. When you think of Colorado, San Diego, Asheville, we're definitely pumping out really good beer up here, and I'm glad that we have that opportunity.
All right, Brady, you had enough time to think about this one here. We'll put you on the spot here.
There are so many. I mean, I would really love. So I think of kind of the Northeast. I think of like Portland. I'd love to go to Allagash and that whole like strip of breweries there. Obviously, like Treehouse and. I'd love to go. I haven't been to very many places really. So there's so many. San Diego would be a sweet place. Definitely Oregon, and I've been in Colorado, but I didn't scratch the surface on the awesome breweries that are there. I mean, there's just so many. Absolutely.
Treehouse is definitely a treat. If neither of you been there, it's literally like Disney World for beer. You drive down this kind of windy path into this like sun-baked gloriousness that appears out of the sky. So highly recommend that. It's near nothing, so there's not like a trip you do to go somewhere else. It's just in the middle of nowhere. So definitely, it's really, really great spot there. Let's go to one last question here before we kind of give you an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about the podcast here. This one's from Robert, and he asks, a design aspect of craft beer that is gaining traction is glassware. Is it long overdue, overrated? Any comments or thoughts? Well, Ryan, we'll start with you. What about glassware in your line when you go to tap rooms? Is it overrated, or is it something that is nice to have detail from that perspective?
I love it. Like I am so disappointed when I get a beer at a brewery and their glassware they give me has no logo. I like try like, what do I take a picture of? It's just a glass of beer. But it's another vector for art, and you're seeing lots of cool stuff. There's a local brewery here, Wild Mind. They're doing what's called Keep the Glass. And so you go there, you order a pint, and they'll give you the glass, and it's got this crazy artwork, super nice. Check that one out too. So that's cool. I buy too many, and no way. Like
I'm not allowed to buy anymore. Put it that way.
I just sold like 40 at a garage sale in the spring because I had so many, and I still have way too many.
You didn't tell me about this, Ryan. I would have bought probably half of them.
I don't think you would have. We used to buy a glass at every brewery we went to, and then I just had a lot of boring glasses. So I just kept all the ones that I like. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
I think it's a great answer. What about you, Brady, what about your point of
I
view?
love glassware. I'm obsessed with it. So I had to do a little brew chat glassware.
Nice. Very nice.
And I agree. Like it's got to be branded, right? It's got to have something cool on it. And so the one thing, and I don't know if this is kind of nationwide or not, but there's been a few breweries that have sponsorships on glassware, and that that really bugs me. But has it gone too far? I don't know. Maybe, but I just enjoy it. Has to be the proper glassware, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
I dig it.
I do as well. The sponsors on the glassware reminds me of like professional sports teams having like sponsors on the shirt, on the logo of their jerseys. It just doesn't. I'm with you on that one. It kind of rubs me the wrong way.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Well, Brady and Ryan, thank you so much for being part of the virtual happy hour. I had a great time talking about all things photography and a little bit what you guys do. Wanted to give you an opportunity here to kind of plug the podcast. People can find you on the internet and a little bit more about anything you want to share here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess check out Brew Chat. I mean, this Friday we have a good episode coming out. Really excited about it. We went to Loopland Brewing, which is in Big Lake. Great brewery. They're making really good stuff. Maybe you've heard of Hui. That's kind of one of their big beers. It'll be out this Friday. Check that out. Just talking to craft beer creatives essentially, and I'd really appreciate it if you checked it out.
Yeah, and if there's anyone that people watching want us to check out, any illustrators that they know of or anything that's craft beer adjacent, we'd love to hear about it, and we can reach out to those folks. And you can find us on Instagram at Brew Chat Podcast is the podcast.
Yep.
I'm at Tap Traveler, and Brady's at Brady's Brews. If you want to follow us individually and see Brady's great photography and
thank you.
My novice level photography compared on the side, and you can guess which one's his.
Awesome. Well, we're talking to Ryan as well. We're talking to Brady as well. Thanks so much for being part of the show, guys. We really appreciate you being on, and looking forward to seeing more great content from both you guys. Thanks for attending, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And congratulations on the 10 years. That's
you.
Amazing.
Awesome.
And I'm excited. Hopefully I get to try that beer.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're hoping that, it comes out to all the places in Minnesota. So tell your favorite breweries to go on board. So we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers, Brady. Cheers, Ryan.
Yeah. Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for watching as well. Our virtual happy hour on this Tuesday. Hope you had a great time. I know I did. Wanted to remind you again about the Untapped 10th anniversary party. We're having a party on October 24th from 3 to 6 p.m. And I'll scroll down here for you to see all the details. We're basically going to be having a live stream celebration for 3 hours. It's going to be an amazing time. I might shave my head if we get the most amount of viewers on there. You don't want to miss this. It's going to be awesome. So make sure to go to untapped.com/10, hit on the going button there. And also want to talk a little bit about our participating breweries. We have 52 now. I remember my first check-in beer. It's going to be a sour beer. It's going to be something that's pretty unique to the situation where we put all the data from the last 10 years. And sour ales are the most popular styles out there right now over the last year over year for all that data. It's really cool to see. We're super excited to partner with Dogfish Head on this initiative. And only 52 breweries already. I've got into this system myself. So if you're out there now, tell your favorite breweries that they'd sign up for this. Go to untapped.com/10. You'll be able to see all this information as well and see all the breweries in the area. We're going to be showing in a map on this page relatively soon, as well as other cool tips and tricks. So come back and check it out. Untapped.com/10. It's going to be a great celebration for that. So thank you so much for watching this evening. We hope to see you on Thursday again. And we'll be talking to a great people. So check out untapped.com/TV for all the information for what's happening. A Night Shift will be the brewery that we'll be talking to this Thursday at 7 p.m. Their co-founder, Michael, will be on as well. So once again, go to untapped.tv and let us know if you have any feedback at media@untapped.com. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great night, everybody.